In our headlines on this Thursday afternoon, September 14th. North Korea's Kim Jong-un voices unwavering support for Moscow's war in Ukraine, while Vladimir Putin accepts an invitation to North Korea, extended during Wednesday's summit talks in Russia. And the US reiterates its resolve to take action against North Korea and Russia in the event of an arms deal between the two countries to advance Moscow's aggression and to bolster Pyongyang's ambitions. Meanwhile, South Korea pledges $6 billion in financial support for the African continent to advance energy transition and agricultural transformation as the two partners bolster collaboration. Russia's Vladimir Putin has reportedly accepted an invitation to North Korea, extended by Kim Jong-un during their talks at a spaceport in Russia's Far East earlier on Wednesday. Our foreign affairs correspondent Pei Ji covers that exchange and more.
As Kim arrived at a remote space launch site in Russia's Far East, the leaders of the two isolated states exchanged smiles and shook hands. Putin, who's usually late to meetings with other foreign leaders, arrived at the Vostochny Cosmodrome early and waited for Kim for about 30 minutes. Since their meeting in 2019, the war in Ukraine has turned the tables, as it is Putin who's reaching out to Kim for help, with Russia completely isolated on the global stage, in need of help for more weapons. In his opening remarks, Putin thanked Kim for accepting Russia's invitation, saying they have a lot to discuss.
Of course, we need to discuss the issues of economic cooperation and humanitarian issues, as well as the situation in the region.
Sitting next to Putin, Kim said Russia is fighting a sacred war and stressed that his regime would fight together in the battle against imperialism.
We have constantly expressed our full and unconditional support for all the decisions taken by the President and the Russian leadership. And I want to assure you that we will always be together with Russia in the fight against imperialism.
The two leaders held talks for several hours with their ministers before holding a separate one-on-one meeting. This was followed by a lavish lunch where Kim said they held an elaborate discussion about the military and political situation on the Korean Peninsula and in Europe. On the situation in Ukraine, he assured Putin that Russia will win against evil.
The Russian army and people will certainly secure a great victory in the sacred struggle for the punishment of a great evil that claims hegemony and feeds an expansionist illusion.
The North Korean leader also expressed hopes that Wednesday's visit will play an important role in transforming their traditionally friendly relations into a, quote, unbreakable strategic partnership. Meanwhile, Russia has also signaled its willingness to assist Pyongyang. When asked by a reporter whether Russia would help North Korea launch its own satellites and rockets, Putin responded by saying, "That's exactly why we're here." He added that Kim showed great interest in rocket engineering. Before sitting down for talks, Putin showed Kim around the building, where Russia's new space booster, the Angara, is assembled. The fact that the two leaders chose this specific spaceport for the meeting suggests that North Korea and Russia will enhance security cooperation, as it is a symbol of Russia's ambitions as a space power. From Pyongyang, Kim took a long train journey aboard his private armored train to get there. Putin may offer satellite launch technology to Kim in exchange for North Korean weapons and ammunitions. This has been sparking concerns regarding Russia's resupplying of weapons for the war in Ukraine and the development of North Korea's missile capabilities. Ji, Arirang News.
And amid those very concerns, the message from the Biden administration remains consistent. That is, an arms deal between Moscow and Pyongyang will lead to, quote, repercussions. Our foreign affairs correspondent Lee reports.
The U.S. warns that North Korea and Russia may have to pay the price following the possibility of an arms deal at the bilateral summit between Kim Jong-un and Vladimir Putin. U.S. National Security Council spokesman John Kirby on Thursday said that should Russia and North Korea decide to move forward with a bilateral arms deal, Washington will take measures to deal with that.
As Jake Sullivan said last week, there will certainly be repercussions for North Korea, both from the United States and from the international community.
He also urged North Korea to not support Russia's invasion of Ukraine.
As I've said before, we continue to urge North Korea to meet its public commitments not to support Russia's war in Ukraine. No nation on the planet, nobody, should be helping Mr. Putin kill innocent Ukrainians.
U.S. State Department spokesperson Matthew Miller on the same day also expressed his concerns on potential military ties between Pyongyang and Moscow.
It is troubling when you see the Russians talking about cooperating with North Korea on programs that would violate UN Security Council resolutions that Russia itself voted for.
This comes as Putin, during his summit with Kim, pledged that Russia will support the development of North Korea's satellites as the two met at a Russian spaceport. The State Department spokesperson added that Washington will keep a close eye on the bilateral relations and impose sanctions if needed. The U.S. ambassador to the UN, Linda Thomas-Greenfield, also said that Russia seeking close ties with North Korea simply shows Moscow's desperation. The U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken, a day before the top summit, said during his podcast interview that Washington doesn't want Russia to secure military power to invade Ukraine, nor Pyongyang gaining technological benefits from Moscow. Though neither North Korea nor Russia has yet made an announcement on Thursday's summit, many forecast that Pyongyang's arms deal to Moscow and Moscow's technological assistance on satellite and missile development had been on the table. The Kremlin, however, said that the bilateral dialogue should not be the concern of any third party. Lee Dae-hyun, Arirang News.
And the U.S. State Department has approved the sale of additional F-35 jets to South Korea. The department reportedly relayed to Congress its decision to sell 25 more F-35 jets to Korea, as well as related equipment for $5 billion. Seoul already has in its possession 40 such fighter jets. Washington believes the sale will bolster Seoul's ability to tackle security threats to deter aggression in the region. This latest development follows Seoul's own green light back in March to buy more jets amid tensions on the Korean peninsula. And staying in the U.S., consumer prices there hiked slightly higher than expectations in August as prices at the pumps have been rising. Our Lee Seung-jae has more.
The U.S. is seeing inflation accelerate for a second straight month in August. According to data from the Bureau of Labor Statistics released Wednesday, the U.S. Consumer Price Index rose 3.7% in August from a year earlier, up from July's figure of 3.2%. The latest inflation figure is slightly higher than the 3.6% rise economists were expecting. In addition, on a month-to-month basis, prices rose 0.6%, matching forecasts, while the core annual index also met expectations, easing to 4.3% from 4.7% in July, its slowest pace since September 2021. The latest report also indicated that the index for gasoline was the largest contributor to the monthly all-items increase, accounting for over half of the increase. The CPI's gasoline index spiked 10.6% in August from a month earlier, up sharply from a 0.2% gain in July. With all major energy component indexes increasing, the overall energy index rose 5.6%. Also, the shelter index rose for the 40th consecutive month. Global oil prices have been rising recently, with the OPEC Plus cutting production and demand surging. Watchers say the deadly floods in Libya will also disrupt oil exports further, pushing up prices at the pump even more. However, economists say that despite a rise in inflation, the U.S. Fed is still expected to hold rates steady next week during their FOMC meeting, citing lower consumer spending and a weaker U.S. job market. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
Here in Korea, exports of electronic devices and tech products lost ground last month, plunging more than 16% on year. Now, Seoul's Trade Ministry on Thursday said exports of ICT goods in August fell to $16.1 billion amid lackluster demand. In contrast, chip exports noted some improvement, rising to $8.6 billion in August, up from $6.2 billion back in January. And findings for the first 4 months of this year show a tangible boost in European Union imports from Korea, which now trails China, the US and the UK. According to the Korea International Trade Association on this Thursday, the value of EU imports from Korea rose 10.7% on year. Now, this is the first time Korea has surpassed Japan and Russia in terms of goods sold to the EU. Pundits are linking this latest performance to greater EU demand for Korean cars and biomedical products that surged over 13% and 7% respectively. Over in Busan, relevant authorities from Korea and Africa gathered to address economic cooperation, during which officials here pledged $6 billion in financial assistance for the African continent to promote energy transition and agricultural transformation. Our business correspondent Shin Ha-young reports.
Economic ties between South Korea and Africa can develop into a powerful alliance. That's according to Seoul's finance minister on Wednesday in his opening speech at the 7th Korea-Africa Economic Cooperation or KOAFEC Ministerial Conference, with a biennial event held for the first time in 5 years due to the COVID-19 pandemic.
The importance of South Korea and Africa in the international society has significantly increased. I'm confident that if South Korea's advanced industries and Africa's growth potential are combined, we can become the most powerful alliance in leading the recovery of the global society.
Under the theme of just energy transition and agricultural transformation in Africa, representatives from 38 African countries gathered in the southeastern port city of Busan to discuss ways to bolster economic cooperation. As a part of the joint declaration by South Korea and Africa, action plans for the next 2 years were announced. The plans include Seoul's $6 billion financial aid package to support various projects in Africa, with a special focus on energy transition, agricultural, and education projects. Both sides agreed that insufficient electricity supply has delayed Africa's economic growth and industrialization. In response, they decided to work together to develop infrastructures such as power generation facilities, as well as dealing with renewable energy and energy efficiency.
Africa has huge amount of renewable energy, and this will allow us to be able to support that. And in that sense, Korea is already supporting Africa through the Korea Trust Fund to actually prepare a study that will allow Africa to be able to consider the manufacturing of solar panels in Africa. That will help also the energy transition in Africa. So it's a big component.
For agricultural innovation, initiatives will involve smart farming, the adoption of modern agricultural technologies, and the development of rice supply chains. On the sideline of the conference, South Korea and the African Development Bank held a signing ceremony for Seoul's commitment to increase its support for the KOAFEC Trust Fund. Under the agreement, it will provide an additional $24 million to the AFDB as part of the $6 billion financial package. Both sides agreed to further develop the economic cooperation discussed in the KOAFEC Ministerial Conference as groundwork for meaningful outcomes at the South Korea-Africa Summit in Seoul in May of next year. Shin Ha-young, Arirang News, Busan.
The city of Goyang here in Korea is hosting the world's largest hydrogen exhibition amid the global campaign to ease our carbon footprints. Our Moon Hae-ryun was there.
Around a quarter of all carbon reduction by 2050 is predicted to be achieved through the use of hydrogen, which set the tone for this year's H2 meet. Starting on Wednesday through to Friday, it's the biggest hydrogen-related exhibition in the world and is hosted by South Korea every year.
Exhibitions like this are getting bigger and bigger every year as countries aim to go carbon neutral. This year's turnout is the biggest yet, with 280 companies from 17 countries in attendance.
During the opening ceremony, the second Vice Minister of the Ministry of Trade, Industry and Energy spoke of the importance of global cooperation for hydrogen alternatives to fossil fuels as the world grapples with extreme weather and global warming.
In order to build a clean, hydrogen-centred ecosystem that can contribute to greenhouse gas reduction substantially, we will establish a clean hydrogen certification system within the year and secure a stable supply chain through global cooperation.
South Korea is currently dominating the global hydrogen auto industry with a market share of over 35%. However, according to market research company SNE Research, hydrogen-fueled cars are lagging with a nearly 10% decline in sales between January and July this year compared to the same period last year. This has been attributed to the lack of necessary infrastructure such as charging stations as well as high storage and distribution costs. As a result, companies are seeking to make hydrogen cheaper and more accessible. Hyundai Motor's business model is to collect food waste as a source of hydrogen to lower production costs and make hydrogen truly net zero. Steel manufacturer POSCO has developed new hydrogen fuel tanks made of thin steel strips that can be recycled after usage to replace the traditional carbon-based fuel tanks, and storage cylinders made of stronger steel with a lower production cost than the original. Hanwha Group showcased its integrated value chain for producing, storing and distributing clean hydrogen.
We will be shipping hydrogen using our ships from Hanwha Ocean and storing hydrogen using our hydrogen tanks, which are the biggest in the world.
As South Korea slowly phases out grey hydrogen produced from fossil fuels to clean hydrogen, the government and domestic companies hope to further research and development to help them achieve their carbon neutrality goals. Moon Hae-ryeon, Arirang News.
Meanwhile, in neighboring China, a K-tourism roadshow is taking place there for the first time in 7 years. Seoul's Culture Ministry says the event seeks to boost tourism between the two countries. 64 Korean businesses, including hotels, duty-free shops, airlines and theme parks, are partaking in the roadshow in hopes of collaboration with China-based travel agencies and online travel platforms. The roadshow began in Beijing this past Wednesday and will continue in Shanghai this coming Friday until Sunday, ahead of China's Golden Week holiday starting late September to early October. Traditional wedding attire adorned by royal women of the Joseon dynasty is known as Hwarot, and a number of them are going on display at a special exhibition here in the country, owing in part to a donation by BTS member RM. Our Shin Se-byuk explains.
Draped in vibrant crimson and adorned with delicate embroidery, these are the Hwarot, bridal robes worn by the women of the Joseon dynasty's royal court. They are crafted using safflower dye that's harvested in August. They are dyed numerous times, resulting in the deepest and purest shade of red. As they're meticulously embroidered in a variety of colors and elegantly finished with touches of gold. The National Palace Museum of Korea in central Seoul is holding a special exhibition starting on September 15th, showcasing various hwarots and the tools used at royal weddings during the Joseon dynasty. Featured in this exhibition are 9 hwarot pieces, 3 in Korea and 6 from American museums such as the Field Museum in Chicago and Brooklyn Museum in New York. In particular, the Hwarot from the Los Angeles County Museum of Art has recently undergone conservation treatment thanks to RM, a member of K-pop sensation BTS. RM donated 100 million Korean won, or roughly $75,000 last year, to the Overseas Korean Cultural Heritage Foundation in support of the preservation and restoration of Korea's cultural heritage abroad. The hwarot worn by Princess Pogon, the second-born daughter of King Sunjo, is also on display. It is the only surviving example where the wearer is actually known. In this exhibition, interactive touchscreen displays offer a close-up view of the beautiful embroidery, featuring motifs like phoenixes and flowers. Visitors can immerse themselves in the essential spaces of royal weddings and explore the various tools and materials used in crafting hwarot. The organizer hopes this exhibition can provide visitors with a deeper appreciation of traditional royal wedding culture.
I wish visitors could gain a deeper understanding of those who wore hwarot and share meaningful moments that bridge the past to the present.
The exhibition, Blooming Hwarot, Bridal Robes of the Joseon Royal Court, will run until December 15th. Shin Se-byuk, Arirang News.
Let's take a look at what's going on in the world now. In Vietnam, at least 56 people, including 4 children, have died in an apartment building fire. Vietnamese media have reported that the blaze in the capital, Hanoi, late on Tuesday evening also injured 37 others. The cause of the fire is being determined, but according to witnesses, it began in the parking garage of the 9-story building where many bikes were parked. Firefighters struggled to save those trapped in the building due to its location in a narrow alley and a lack of fire escapes. The owner of the building has been arrested on charges of violating fire prevention regulations. Hanoi is a fast-growing city and has seen a number of new apartments being built in recent years. But local authorities say many of these do not meet fire safety rules. In the United States, leaders in big tech, including Elon Musk and Mark Zuckerberg, are meeting with lawmakers in Congress to discuss the future of artificial intelligence and laws that could govern it. 3 separate meetings on AI are being held this week on Capitol Hill. The meetings come before lawmakers begin drafting AI policies to protect against potentially dangerous material, including deep fakes. And some big tech leaders seem to be mostly in agreement on the need for regulation.
I think it is important for similar reasons to have a regulator which you can think of as a referee to ensure that companies take actions that are safe and in the interest of the general public.
There is still a way to go, however, as there's no consensus on what regulation should look like. Scientists say that humanity has crossed 6 of the 9 boundaries for livability on Earth. That's according to a report published on Wednesday in Science Advances by an international team of 29 experts. The boundaries are considered safe limits that should not be exceeded if people are to survive on the planet. They include integrity of the biosphere, climate change, and the use and availability of fresh water. The report specifically warned against increasing deforestation, excessive biomass use, and the spread of man-made products like plastic. It also said that the planet's health is now well outside of the safe operating space for humanity. The remaining boundaries not yet breached are ocean acidification, ozone depletion, and air pollution. And finally, Mexico's Congress has unveiled a pair of alleged mummified alien bodies. The small shriveled specimens were put on display on Tuesday at Mexico's first public hearing on unidentified anomalous phenomena. Mexican journalist and UFO enthusiast Jaime Maussan made the reveal, claiming that the corpses were extraterrestrials. Each of the corpses has 3 fingers per hand and an elongated head. He said they were found in 2017 in Peru and are 1,000 years old. According to one medical expert, X-rays and DNA testing have shown that the corpses are not related to human beings. But there are doubts, as similar corpse findings have turned out to be the mummified remains of children. Matthew Ashley, Arirang News.
Good afternoon. Rain has let up in most of the central parts of the country, but parts of the south and east of Gangwon-do province are seeing rain today. East of Gangwon-do could see more than 100 millimeters of showers. Northern parts of Gyeongsang-Bukdo province and south coast could see up to 70 millimeters through tomorrow. The rest of the country could see 5 to 60 millimeters of rainfall. Central areas are under partly sunny skies, and afternoon temperatures are on the warmer side again, going up 4 degrees higher this afternoon at 29 degrees here in Seoul. But rain-affected regions are as breezy as yesterday, hovering around mid-20s this afternoon. Then morning sunshine in the upper regions is joined by clouds in the afternoon. Rain returns to the capital area tomorrow, and this weekend looks to be a rainy one as well. However, after this week's wet weather, we'll get one step closer to the autumn next week. That's Korea for you, and here's a look at the international weather conditions.
And that is all the time we have for this edition of the Daily Report. In our panel session coming up right after this break, we sit down with a special pair of ambassadors to stay with us.
You know what's funny is I have a YouTube channel and I could have like 1,000 positive comments and just one guy says no jam and I'm like, so
yeah.
I could feel his pain.
Oh, yeah. That's the real old boy style. Wow.
Arirang, what matters?
Contour the world, simply contour. India, the United Kingdom, New Zealand. Woo!
I'm excited. Are you excited?
Of course.
Yeah.
Music, start.
Welcome. 엄청난 에너지를 춤으로 뿜어내는 나라. 감당할 수 있겠니? 한국에 오면 먹어야죠. 먹어도 끝이 없는 나라. 감당할 수 있겠니?
하나, 둘, 셋.
Hey, Mr. Cupid,
you listen to what I say? I may be stupid or quite naive.
끝없이 쏟아지는 포토스팟. 휴대폰 한 대로 감당할 수 있겠니?
Arrow straight through my heart.
A Western-style building that served as a diplomatic venue over 100 years ago is opening its doors to the public this month. Now, back in June, diplomats and social media influencers were invited for a preview of the Tondokjeon Hall in Toksugun Palace in central Seoul. So what is the Tondokjeon Hall? Who are the ambassadors appointed to promote awareness about it? And how are they planning to reach out to the public here and beyond? Welcome to Issues and Insiders. Today I have a panel of foreign ambassadors appointed to promote awareness of Tondokjeon Hall, located in Toksugun Palace in central Seoul. I have Adriana Duella here in the studio. Adriana, it's a pleasure to have you with us.
Hi, it's my pleasure.
I also have Shaba Soke with us. Shaba, welcome to the studio.
Thank you so much. It's lovely to meet you.
Right. Adriana, let's begin with some details about the Tondokjeon Hall in Toksugun Palace, which I believe is officially poised to open on the 25th of this particular month.
Yes, exactly. Tondokjeon Hall is a Western-style building inside the Toksugun Palace. It was built around 1993, and the usage of it was kind of a guest house for foreigners in a certain level, you know. And it's a diplomatic space for the Korean Empire at that time. So this palace, as you can see, is like Western style, so it's really different, you know, from the palace atmosphere, and kind of show for me the urge of Korean Empire at that time to become more global, to reach foreigners, to reach the world, you know. And that's what they were trying to do, I think. The space also was used as a banquet for the king and different events. And after 20 years from its opening, it was destroyed during the Japanese colonial era. So now they are rebuilding it, and they are doing an amazing work with the research, because we don't really have many proof of how it used to look, especially in the inside. So they are doing a research of what was the trend at the time, how it should have looked, what they were researching for, and they are rebuilding it in that sense. And it's extremely hard, I think, but it's an amazing job that they're doing.
Right, it's also a very ambitious endeavor right there. Shaba, I believe you were among the influencers who joined diplomats to a preview of Tondokjeon Hall back in June. What were your thoughts upon seeing this particular hall?
Exactly. So I have to say I felt very, very honored to have visited it among the first people. It's a very historically important building, so I felt as if I was time traveling, because it wasn't there for around 100 years, right? So nobody in that timeline has even seen maybe pictures of it or has ever imagined what it would look like. But then they found this one picture and they rebuilt this whole place based on that one picture, as far as I remember well. So it felt very new, very refreshing, and very important. And I was impressed. I was truly impressed, and I felt this is a hall that everybody should know of.
Right, I can't wait to visit myself once it officially opens. And what about you, Adriana? What impressed you the most about Tondokjeon Hall, which served as a diplomatic venue then during the Korean Empire?
Actually, the first thing that everyone can notice is that it's a really colorful building. There is a lot of green, and that green kind of reminds the Art Nouveau. That was the style at the time in France, was a trend. So they rebuilt it also, I think having that reference. But at the same time, it's a green that it's
it's used a lot also in the decoration in traditional Korean palace, you know. So I think that was the thing that kind of impressed me. It's like they didn't choose anything by case. Every single detail is thought to kind of be fusion, you know, of cultures, a place where a foreigner can come and feel comfortable, but at the same time Korea doesn't lose its identity, because there is an entire part that is traditional also inside the Doksugun Palace. So that was quite impressive, and yeah, I really liked that detail.
Adriana, among the ambassadors chosen to promote awareness of Dongdeokjeon Hall, I understand, are countries that established ties with the Korean Empire 100 years ago. Now, first, what can you tell us about Korea's past and present ties with your home country, Italy, I believe?
Oh, well, recently I discovered that the first Westerner that discovered the existence of Korea was Marco Polo. And that's amazing, I think. It's kind of like destiny for me to know. And also at the end of 16th century, Italy sent some Christian missionary to Korea as well. So there is some kind of contact between the two countries, but officially that was in 1884, I guess. Yeah, almost 140 years ago. Next year is going to be 140 years. And I feel like the relationship between Italy and Korea is really sincere relationship, not only politic. Like during the Korean War as well, Italy sent its medical aid to Korea. Almost 130 people stayed in Korea for a few years. And there keep being exchanges, like a lot of Koreans goes to Italy to learn art, opera, and a lot of Italian gets more and more interested about Korean culture as well. Like we have almost 3 universities where you can study Korean, and it's become more and more popular as well. So yeah, and I think that it's really kind of sincere relationship, I can say. And I cannot wait for next year, 140 years. There are going to be many events, so I cannot wait.
Right, neither can I. Likewise, Shaba, you are from Hungary, I understand.
Yes.
Could you tell us a bit more about Hungary's ties with South Korea?
Of course. So our first recorded ties go way back to the 19th century. And actually a person named Gáspár Ferenc, or like Ferenc Gáspár for us, visited from the Austro-Hungarian Empire to Joseon to sign a treaty of friendly trade and navigation. And after that, unfortunately, well, Korea became a colony of Japan and Russia took over Hungary, so became a communist country. And our ties were almost severed. But after that, at the end of the 20th century, in 1989, we restored our ties. And actually, Hungary was the first previously communist country to have make official ties with South Korea. And then we went back and went on to do more economic developments and economic exchanges. But that was even before we officially restored the ties. That was, if I remember well, in the 1980s, but before '89. Also now we have a lot of economical improvements coming in from Korea. And also Korea has a lot of factories in Hungary now. For example, am I allowed to say brands?
Yes,
so
you are.
We have a lot of Samsung factories in Hungary, and it's becoming more and more popular. And also Korea has now a Korean department in one of our most prestigious universities, I think since 2008, and a lot of students are looking forward to learning Korean. It's becoming more and more popular. People are getting to know Korea way better, and I'm looking forward to hearing more about these developments.
And Shaba, how do you explain the growing interest in Korea among the public there in Hungary?
I would say, I think it's thanks to Hallyu. And also the fact that it's very revered in Hungary how Korea has established its economy after the war, because we still couldn't reach that level of economic growth as Korea, so we look up to the country and saying, wow, how can we do this as well? I think we are looking up to the country. I think we have interest and in the fact that we can learn a lot from Korea's development.
And I'm sure it could be a mutual learning experience, of course, for both Korea and Hungary. Adriana, how does it feel to have been selected as a foreign ambassador to promote understanding of this ancient Korean whole of history and diplomacy? I understand. I'm sure it should be a very daunting task.
It's such an honor, and like I arrived to Korea 8 years ago now, and I couldn't imagine that I becoming like like an ambassador of Royal Palace. It's like a dream actually, and I was so proud of it and happy that I share it on my social media, and a lot of people that I also don't know Italians contacted me and was like, oh, I'm so proud of you. I feel like represented now also in Korean activities, like cultural activities, and I felt like, wow, I'm representing my countries,
What brought you to Korea 8 years ago?
Oh, actually, I came here just because I wanted to study acting, because we don't have acting and department and university in Italy. So I wanted to study more in a university, so that's why I came to Korea.
I see. Shaba, meanwhile, the group of ambassadors come from countries that were either colonized, like South Korea and Hungary, or that did colonize in the past. And that being said, now Hungary, like you mentioned earlier, like Korea, shares a period of colonization. What are the implications of this latest venue as an ambassador for you, keeping that commonality between the two countries in mind?
Actually, I think Dongdokcheon Hall is a very, very good sign, a very good symbol of saying that, hey, I do not let history, I do not let the past destroy our cultural heritage. We do not let it affect our future, and we keep our strength. It doesn't matter what happened in the past, we are going on strong, we have the unity, and at the same time we are very peaceful and opening to the world. As far as I know, it was destroyed during the Japanese colonial era, right? And we have a lot of buildings as well. Those were heavily damaged in those eras of Hungary as well. But we are just like South Korea. We are very patriotic, and we always fought for our freedom. So I think if this was a building in Hungary that was restored to its previous perfect state, I think we would feel very, very united, very strong, and yet at peace. Because this is a new era, and we're hoping that this kind of issues of the past are not going to happen again, and maybe these buildings could symbol this kind of social and cultural improvements.
Yeah. Hopefully. Adriana, as a foreigner currently residing here in South Korea, how accessible do you suppose is access, that is, to information to Korea's history?
Well, if you speak Korean or your mother tongue is English, I think that it's quite easy to get some information. But as in Italy, the mother tongue is not English, and I think for other countries it may be hard to understand, those information. Even sometimes when I go to museums, I see the description of some artwork. There is like this amount of description in Korean, and after just one sentence in English as well. So even in English, sometimes there is a poor translation, and also in other languages, of course. So also our role here as an ambassador for Doksugung is also being kind of a bridge to also other countries that maybe don't speak English, so we may translate or make some guide, some guide tour or something in Italian, for example. That is, I think, a good chance for Doksugung, but also for other palaces or for the touristic improvement in Korea.
Right, of course. Shaba, is there a specific subject regarding Korea's history or culture that the people in Hungary are most curious about?
Well, unfortunately, many Hungarians still do not know enough about Korea, but the ones who do, they are very much interested, of course, in K-pop or some of the Korean historical dramas. Those are being played on Hungarian TV. Also, healthy life enthusiasts, they know a lot about kimchi. It's becoming more and more famous because of its health benefits. And also, as I previously mentioned, the economic growth after the war. I think once people get to know more information and more details about Korea's history and Korea's economy and societal and economical development, they would be very, very interested in how Korea overcame these past hardships.
Right, indeed. And Adriana, what about in Italy? What are Italians most curious about with regard to Korea's culture or history?
Oh, well, in my experience, all of my friends from Italy, when they come here to visit Korea, the first thing that they always ask me about is, oh, so this was rebuilt, why? So they don't really know about the Japanese colonial era, and they're really curious about that. Also, there is a big difference between Italy and Korea, is that in Korea, traditionally, everything was built with wood, and in Italy was stone. So, of course, there is a difference, also the difference of the material, it's a big difference, and in Italy, you know, everywhere you can notice there is some cultural heritage, 200, 2,000 years old monument or buildings. But when they come here, they kind of think always like, why is it's a new city and that's good, but so where all the cultural heritage, why, what happened? So they're really curious about, I think, the Japanese colonial era, because we don't really study enough in Italy about that.
Right, I see. Shaba, do tell us a bit about your plans as ambassador for the Tongdokjeon Hall.
So actually, I am going to be an ambassador, or where I am already an ambassador for not just Tongdokjeon Hall, but for the whole Deoksugung Palace. And this is one of my main tasks right now, but maybe later on it's going to be a little bit more extensive. For now, my plans are to make a bridge between the Hungarian embassy and the cultural center in Korea. And also I would love to introduce the hall in several languages, so it can have a lot of promotion and a lot of news outlets to give and to be shown to other foreigners so they can hear about it more easily, as this building is very historically important, and I think it needs a way bigger promotion and it needs a lot of attention so it can shine as it was originally intended to.
Thank you so much for that. And Adriana, what about you? How do you plan to promote awareness about Tongdokjeon Hall?
Well, first of all, nowadays, the easiest way to reach as many people as possible is social media. So, of course, uploading content about Deoksugung on social media is the priority right now. But also, of course, as Shaba also mentioned, being a bridge between the Italian Culture Institute is also one of the priorities. And we are already working for some events, maybe next year, because of the anniversary of the friendship between Korea and Italy. So there may be some events, some exhibition, for example. So we are also working as a bridge, and yeah, we hope to kind of translate as much as possible in Italian, for example. That would be amazing. And even physically, every time, even a few days back, my parents were also in Korea, and of course we visit Deoksugung and introduce them, but also to my friends. So I think what we are here for is just talk as much as possible about Deoksugung and let everyone knows what was its purpose and Tongdokjeon Hall. Yeah, I think that's our purpose.
Good to know, and thank you so much for that. We seem to have a few more minutes left, so Shaba, perhaps you could talk a bit more about your personal story. Beyond your work as an ambassador, I understand you work here in Korea as a model and actress. What efforts can be made, perhaps, to better support the presence of foreign talents like yourself here on Korea's screen productions?
Well, as working in the entertainment industry for foreigners in Korea is very popular, I think it's very important to have the right regulations and to give a good amount of protection to foreign talents in here. Because, for example, when Koreans, they enter foreign countries, they receive the same amount of protection as the same country's own talents. But in Korea, I feel like there are regulations, but not necessarily enough institutions or groups to actually enforce these regulations. So I think maybe an entity like a union or just a smaller group that could focus on these issues and give protection to the foreigner talents would be a very good improvement. And one more thing is, I think, very important to mention is a certification of being and working as an artist. There is such a thing in Korea, but for some reason we do not qualify for that, even though we have a lot of conditions that we need to match when we are even applying for a visa. And I think it would be a great development if we could get that certification, because that involves a certain amount of protection from the Korean unions for talents.
Right, I see. And Shaba, what brought you to Korea, by the way?
I used to be a dancer, and I wanted to become a backup dancer, and then times changed, and I became a model and actress.
Right, I see. Now, Adriana, earlier you mentioned coming to Korea 8 years ago to study drama here in the country.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts regarding Korea's academic path to becoming an actress, an actor?
Oh, well, I think my curriculum at university was one of the best, I guess, also in Korea. But also, if I think compared to Italy, it's quite a good curriculum. And of course, as a foreigner, acting is something that requires a language skills. So you need to be fluent. And that's nice. That was also a nice way to learn Korean more passionately. And let's say the problem is when you graduate and you go to the field, it's that still there are not really many roles for foreigners, because Korea get more and more globalized, more global, of course. Now, even when I go outside, I can see a lot of foreigners in the streets. A lot of them speak Korean really fluently, but still, if we watch dramas or movie, we can see that foreigners are speaking some broke Korean or only English, and that is changing. And I think with time, it's going to require some time, but it's going to change also in the field. So foreigner actors are going to be more normalized and going to have even bigger roles. So I'm waiting for it.
Right, I'm sure they'll be make it a very busy schedule for you, like acting as well as promoting Dongdokjeon Hall.
Oh, I hope.
Right, thank you, Adriana, and also Shaba, thank you so much for your efforts in promoting Dongdokjeon Hall.
Thank you.
Right, well, that ends this edition of Issues and Insiders. For those of you interested, Dongdokjeon Hall in Deoksugung Palace in Central Seoul will open on the 25th of September. See you tomorrow.
Hello everyone, my name is Songkan Luangmuniton. I am the ambassador of the Lao PDR to the Republic